Thanks.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I'm one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash Fortune Divine.
Hi, y'all.
And returning to us from Real Spoilers Podcast, Kevin Brackett.
Lulu Dallas Multipass.
And each week, we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatthemovies.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. That's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV. We review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, and Watchmen, and not Wheel of Time. Find all that information and past episodes at shatontv.com. Finally, to hang out with us live all week long, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatthemovies.com/Twitch, where we play video games, host watch parties, and talk to the King Bee until he cries. So this week's movie commission comes from our very first Shat the Movies Fantasy Football League winner, Stephen Happy Harry Jenkins. And Stephen writes, "Hey guys, as the winner of the first annual Shat on Fantasy Football League, I'm told I get to commission a movie for the podcast, which is awesome since I've been listening to you guys and gals since episode number 8 back in 2016. i.e. the Die Hard episode. I'm still baffled as to how Gene gave that movie only one wipe, by the way. It's damn near perfect and holds up even to this day as one of the best action movies of all time. I watched it the other day with my kids, and even they seem to enjoy it. Father of the Year? Yes, sir. But I digress. I decided to commission a football-themed movie in honor of my victory in the Fantasy Football League. When I think of classic football movies, the first one to invariably come to mind is the 1993 David Anspaugh-directed classic Rudy, starring Sean Astin, Ned Beatty, Charles S. Dutton, and even a young Vince Vaughn. I probably wouldn't name this movie if asked to pick my top 10 movies of all time, but I've seen it countless times and probably won't turn the channel the next time I stumble onto TNT's 1 millionth showing of it. Like similar classics like Rocky, The Karate Kid, and Hoosiers, Rudy's one of those all-American, sweet-natured, feel-good family dramas about the underdog who outworks the competition and overcomes the odds to come out a champion in the end, even if one of them has to win using an illegal kick. As I write this commission request, I learned for the first time that Rudy was actually made by the same creative team that made Hoosiers, which makes sense as they are very similar movies, but with a definitive edge going to Hoosiers. Yes, movies like Rudy are corn, predictable, manipulative, and suffer from some now dated movie tropes of the era, but that being said, Rudy is, in my opinion, one of the best sports movies of all time. Sean Astin is at his all-time best, the score is fantastic, the Notre Dame campus looks amazing enough to make someone actually want to travel to Indiana, and the football scenes are classic. And I dare anyone not to get goosebumps when they hear Charles S. Dutton's "You're 5'0", 100 speech for the 100th time. So thanks guys in advance for reviewing this movie, and also thanks to Hot Sauce Steve for setting up and running the Fantasy Football League this year, as it was a lot of fun. He roots for a crappy football team, the Lions, like me, the Jaguars, but he seems to like good people. Keep up the great work, Shat crew, and may you all have a happy and healthy 2021. This is still the best movie review podcast in all the land. Sincerely, Stephen Happy Harry Jenkins." Rudy is a 1993 sports biopic directed by David Anspaugh. It's an account of the life of Daniel Rudy Ruettiger, who harbored dreams of playing football at the University of Notre Dame despite significant obstacles. It was the first film that the Notre Dame administration allowed to be shot on campus since Knute Rockne, All-American, in 1940. In 2005, Rudy was named one of the best 25 sports movies of the previous 25 years in 2 polls by ESPN. And it was ranked the 54th most inspiring film of all time in the AFI 100 Years series. It stars Sean Astin, Ned Beatty, Jason Miller, Robert Prosky and Charles S. Dutton, with supporting roles from Jon Favreau and Vince Vaughn being both actors' first film roles. The script was written by Angelo Pizzo, who created Hoosiers in 1986, which was also directed by Anspaugh. So, Kevin, Ash, we always ask what your memories are of the movie we're covering. Kevin, we'll start with you as our honored guest. What do you remember about Rudy?
Oh, thank you so much. I had not seen this movie since I was a kid. And growing up, not in a huge sports household. I mean, I played Little League Baseball, played some football in middle school, but I didn't watch a ton of sports movies. And the ones I did watch were like Rookie of the Year, Little Giants, The Big Green, like all those kids, like, hey, these kids can win the championship type movies. Not really like anything serious like college football or winning any major championships.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I was football crazy as a kid, but I watched those same movies like Rookie of the Year, Little Giants. I didn't watch movies about guys in their mid-20s who retired from millworking and went to Notre Dame for college. But I begged my mom to let me start playing tackle football at age 8. I was that kid, until sundown every day after school, playing with my friends before they even let us play tackle football, like without pads, even just outside, busting each other's faces. I played through junior high school. I collected football cards. For those of you listening who are a bit younger, that was the thing we did. I still have them all. I think they're going to be worth something someday.
Are you talking about physical NFTs?
Yeah, physical NFTs. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. And there was like the whole debate, like, is Topps better? Is Fleer better? I was a Fleer guy personally, which I think is like the Marvel to Topps' DC. I'm not sure, but I was addicted to Tecmo Bowl and Nintendo. I loved playing Madden when that finally came out, but at no point did I have any interest in watching this movie for the aforementioned reasons. I didn't connect with this story. I didn't get it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing this as a kid, but I don't really remember when. My dad loves a football movie, and so this one definitely made the rotation at some point. And I am a massive football fan, Saints always, and so much so that yesterday I completely neglected my children for my fantasy football draft that I participated in for 2.5 hours and was really excited, guys. I got my 2 quarterbacks I wanted. So just hashtag may win. But so this one definitely came up at some point, and I don't really remember it. I remembered the ending, with him, like the cover of the movie, him being carried off the field. But that was about it. So I was super curious to see Samwise Gamgee, like little baby Samwise, take on a football role.
I was talking to Big D earlier today, and he pointed out that he didn't like this movie because he hates Notre Dame. And I was wondering about your family being LSU fans, like if that was just a turnoff in and of itself. But it sounds like your dad likes this movie.
I don't know if he likes it. I think on the off season, he takes any excuse to watch anything football. Like he recently has just started rewatching on the off season all of those Hard Knocks seasons that are on HBO, where it focuses on one football team. And every year his little hopes and dreams are dashed when it's not the Saints, like he's holding out hope. I mean, my dad is such a huge football fan. My father was on the cover of the New York Times and the USA Today in the early 90s, around this time when this movie came out, because when the NFL strike happened, my dad dressed as a priest and jumped in the middle of the football players' protest circle with a big sign that said "Striking Saints Repent." And he made the cover of like all those major newspapers because of it. So I don't know if he likes this film. I don't know if he likes Notre Dame. Well, he doesn't. I can answer that. He doesn't like Notre Dame. But, it's a football movie. So any excuse to watch a bunch of dudes in pads tackle each other and, get that feeling of like, oh my God, somebody scored, he'll take it.
But, I'm from St. Louis, and so of course we're Cardinals fans, but Rookie of the Year is a Chicago Cubs movie, and I still loved the crap out of that movie as a kid. So sometimes I feel like all that stuff transcends when you have a fun movie or a good movie, and you got to kind of put your like team spirit away a little bit.
I mean, if this had been an Atlanta Falcons movie, it would have been like banned in my house. So I don't think that that's really true for football fans. But baseball fans, I think maybe are a bit kinder.
I feel like the only Arizona team that's ever been in a movie is like the Cardinals and Jerry Maguire. Yeah. And it wasn't really even about the Cardinals.
Nope.
Well, let's transport ourselves back in time to a time when Notre Dame was relevant and hit that trailer.
After high school, I'm going to play football at Notre Dame.
Chasing a stupid dream causes nothing but you and everyone around you heartache.
The problem with dreamers is they usually are not doers.
Are you fully aware of the sacrifices you're going to have to make?
It's the most beautiful campus in the world.
Having dreams is what makes life tolerable.
Notre Dame is for rich kids, smart kids, great athletes. It's not for us.
Ever since I was a kid, I wanted to go to school here. And ever since I was a kid, everybody said it couldn't be done. I always listened to them, believed what they said. I don't want to do that anymore.
Hey, kid! Not supposed to be here.
Not everyone is meant to go to college.
I need your help.
Why should I help?
I just want to be a part of this university.
You're nuts.
Yeah, a lot of people have been telling me that lately.
Sometimes a winner is a dreamer who just won't quit.
Hey, you guys! My son's going to Notre Dame!
I'm here to play football for the Irish.
I wish God would put your heart in some of my players' bodies.
You're 5 feet nothing, 100 and nothing, and you got hardly a speck of athletic ability. In this lifetime, you don't have to prove nothing to nobody except yourself.
A true story from the creators of Hoosiers.
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
Daniel Eugene Rudy Ruettiger dreams of playing football at Notre Dame, but lacks the grades, talent, size, and money. Following high school, he works at a steel mill until his best friend Pete is killed in a mill explosion. With the help of a local priest, Rudy enrolls at Holy Cross College, hoping to transfer to Notre Dame. He gets a job from Fortune, the head groundskeeper at Notre Dame Stadium, and sneaks into Fortune's office to sleep on a cot. Rudy learns that Fortune, despite working at the stadium for years, has never seen a Notre Dame football game.
To me, I don't know about you guys, but watching this, it seemed to me like the prototypical plot outline for every inspirational Hallmark type movie that we get today. And when I was watching it, I felt like I knew the movie just because other movies like this or other inspirational stories have the same kind of cliches, or even parody movies. So when you're watching things that are making fun of sports movies or that sort of thing, it's like they've used the exact same outline. And at the time, I mean, obviously this movie is 20 years old, so there may not have been as many movies like it, but you can definitely see the formula that every movie since has tried to follow comes somewhat from this film.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely true. And the movie itself gives its, tells away pretty early. And I think that more so than maybe any film we've ever reviewed before, that everything is so obvious in this movie, because I don't know about you guys, but just the haircuts alone in this film tell you everything you need to know about the characters. When someone's introduced, if they're like clean cut, if they're very like, school ties, Chris O'Donnell type haircut, they're a good guy. They support Rudy. If they have literally any other haircut, and especially if there is gel in their hair or product of some kind, bad guy, going to absolutely destroy Rudy's dreams.
I agree with both of you. Kevin, I think that we need to give this movie a little bit of leeway because it does seem like it's prototypical. And I think that I was willing to forgive a few things because it was kind of territory that we haven't covered before. I mean, I talked about Knute Rockne as a movie. Before Rudy, I think most of the time it was a tale of triumph or greatness for somebody who was really great at their sport, right? That's what sports movies were. And Rudy kind of changed that a little bit. I'm sure there are exceptions, but it's one of the early ones and certainly, one of the ones that we remember. And I took some heat for saying that Good Will Hunting had like a melodramatic script and needed to be more straightforward. So I guess I deserve what I get with Rudy because it is too far to the other side. It's too straightforward. It is a movie where characters They literally just say what the writer wants them to convey. There is no attempt to spice it up with their personality or make it match any sort of idiosyncratic quirk. You know, if somebody's trying to discourage Rudy, they just go up to Rudy and they walk in with their discouraging haircut and they say, "I don't think you're going to make it, Rudy." And then Rudy looks back at them and he says, "I will work hard and show you that I will make it." I mean, it reads like the fake scripts from the porn and Orgasmo. That's basically what we're watching here.
Well, of course. And it's not just the script, it's the music as well. Because there's this scene where, you know, I don't know if you have watched this film lately, those of you that are listening, but there is like, we're going to talk about it, I think, later, but there's like this big 4-year jump. And so all of a sudden we're in, you know, like the lounge where the mill workers are sitting there having their lunch or dinner if they're on the night shift. And Rudy's friend gives him this Notre Dame jacket. And this music, this sentimental, like movie of the week music kicks in, and Rudy looks at his friend and says, "You were the only one who ever believed in my dreams." And I went, okay, that dude's gonna die. And guess what, y'all? 2 seconds later, he dies. He doesn't just die. He dies in this crazy like explosion of fire where it's like slow motion of Rudy going, "No!" And it is such an indicative moment of the rest of the film because the script is so obvious. Everything you know that's going to happen, it happens exactly the way that you think it is because of the way they've laid it out.
It looks like one of those occupational safety videos.
Yes.
Like, make sure there's pressure before you go down and start poking the fire with the hose stick. You know,
Get out of there. Get out of there, friend.
But Ash, maybe you're not seeing this from a dude perspective. I want to say cheers to Rudy for showing two dudes who really dig each other. It's pretty rare for a nice movie. I mean, I recently watched Lord of the Rings. I forgot during like Fellowship, the whole series, but particularly Fellowship, how different it is from other movies we saw in that era, where it's just a bunch of dudes who are just down for each other. Like, and I think that spirit carries on here. I really liked Pete. I was rooting for Pete, and I was like, man, I wish I had a friend who believed in me like that and bought me a jacket to a school I don't even go to from the Salvation Army.
Part of it, though, because this movie was so successful and everyone thinks of this as one of the ultimate underdog stories, it does make me question, is it so predictable because every other movie has used these beats? Because, you know, it's like Hollywood when they look at it on paper, this sells, you know, ramp up the score here, put the scene of losing the friend here. And so it's kind of hard because we've seen it a million times, but at the time, had they seen this a million times?
Also, Kevin, this looks like the most dangerous place in the world to work. Like, they open up and there's just like molten lava everywhere, sparks flying, no one can hear each other. And listen, guys, I've never worked in a mill. Maybe that's the case, but I gotta believe that it's not that dangerous.
No, it looked like an outtake from the engine room of the Titanic, you know, with like all these guys that are dirty and in like, you know, these undershirts just like shoveling things into piles of fire and cauldrons of molten hot poverty. I don't know. Like, it was just really, really bad.
It looked like in the Star Wars, the third movie, what is it, Mustafar, like where Darth Vader, his castle is. It really looked like they were at some volcanic planet.
There was a Darth Vader castle?
Well, that's where he builds his castle. Like when Darth Vader gets rebuilt, he makes it his like home base is on that planet.
Fuck y'all. I was not paying attention at all during any of the Star Wars
it's
movies.
Where both of his, like where his arm and his little legs and that terrible CGI of Hayden Christensen dragging himself along the rocks. It's that place, right?
Yeah.
God, now I feel really bad because that was my favorite of the prequels too. So
oh, good.
Fuck.
Yeah.
But Ash, you mentioned that they jump forward 4 years, and I'm all for moving the plot forward. Like, I love getting in a movie and just hit it and go. But we literally skipped the 4 years after high school. And I figured, like, okay, well, nothing interesting happened then in those 4 years. Like, he graduated high school and just went to work in this mill, and that's that. I looked into Rudy's life. Just a little thing called the Vietnam War happened, during which he enlisted in the fucking Navy. I think that's sort of pertinent to his story of triumph. Maybe let's take some time and examine that.
Yeah, but we had to focus on the important thing, which is that his girlfriend leaves him. And I don't know if there's any 6 Feet Under fans out there, but the woman that plays this role is Lisa from 6 Feet Under. And I despise Lisa in 6 Feet Under. And so anytime she's on screen, like my skin crawls.
Did she leave him? I thought he left her stuck with a mortgage.
No, they didn't actually buy the house.
Oh, I thought he was like, congratulations.
She says we could buy it. No, she's like, we could buy it. And so he'd saved up the $1,000, but instead of using it for the down payment, he uses it to go start his life at Notre Dame. And instead, she gets the greatest glow up of all time, which is ending up with Rudy's like super hot older brother that's taller than 5'2".
Well, the funny thing about that relationship too is that it's like, did Rudy ever seem interested in his girlfriend? I felt like she just followed him around the entire movie, and then he's like, "Hey, I'm peacing out," and it just like it didn't even faze him.
Yeah, I don't know if they're trying to set up like this subplot where Rudy's like some real great ladies man. Like he lays it to her so good that she just is like a puppy dog and follows him around. And then that's why, later on, D-Bob can use him as bait for hot women. Like he's just an ultimate Casanova. He was consulted on this script. Like, all right, so here's the deal. If I talk to a lady, she's mine. That's that. I'm Rudy.
Yeah. I don't understand where at all they were trying to sell that Sean Astin was a ladies' man. I'm not saying anything against Sean Astin, but like they set up Rudy as the ultimate, like he talks to a girl one time at a sign up sheet or something. And D-Bob is automatic like, oh yeah, this is the guy. This movie actually reminded me a lot of another movie I covered on your show, Forrest Gump.
Yes.
And that actually came out the year after this. But the determination that Forrest has, even though he doesn't have the smarts, I felt like they're almost the exact same character overcoming the same type of things. And Rudy seems like a movie to me from the 80s, where Forrest Gump feels more polished, like more of a 90s movie. And I was shocked to see that they were released 1 year apart. They seem so separated in time.
See, I feel like they both feel immensely like 90s films, because there's this thing that happens, especially in the early 90s, where there's like in some films like this, there's this like saccharine like sweetness to it, right? Like there's something about it where and I think no qualms here, I'm not a fan of Forrest Gump at all. I do not think that's a good film. And what happens is I feel like they in a way like patronize their characters. And so by proxy, they patronize the audience and the way that they write their scripts and how sweet and kind and how wonderful. And they like shove all this inspiration down our throats where we're supposed to have like these aha moments. That right there is a very 90s thing that I think movies like Usual Suspects that we reviewed last week and Pulp Fiction, that's speaking directly to, is this like apathy and cynicism of the early 90s that's developing is in direct like contradiction to this little piece of the early 90s that it continued that sweetness and forced inspirational film.
Yeah. Well, I love me some Kaiser Soze, one of my favorites.
Poor Big D.
There is a difference though. I mean, aside from Tom Hanks being a much better actor than Sean Astin, I feel like Forrest Gump is a guy where I wanted to see what he was going to get into next. Even though I identified that saccharine sweetness, it's like he's a likable character, right?
Yeah.
Rudy's not likable. Like I don't like him.
Yeah, I think that's the big difference, though, too, is that you have a character that you're actually rooting for. And Forrest Gump, I mean, he's innocent. He's a good person, where, I mean, I think we're going to get into it. But Rudy, you're like, this guy's a little sketchy.
Speaking of which, Rudy befriends teaching assistant D-Bob, who helps him study in return for Rudy helping him socially with girls. D-Bob has Rudy tested for a learning disability, and the test results indicate that Rudy suffers from dyslexia, a condition that he overcomes to become a better student. At Christmas, Rudy returns home to find that his family appreciates his college academic achievements, although his brother Frank still mocks him for his attempts to play college football. Rudy persists, and even losing his fiancée to his older brother Johnny does not deter him.
So I didn't remember any of this about Rudy's struggles and why he wasn't academically successful. And I think it's fine, obviously, that they're highlighting that he was dyslexic, but I just have such a problem with the way that movies address learning disabilities, like in general, where he's like, yeah, Phil and I had a slight case of dyslexia. Like that's such a thing that they do. Like there isn't a slight case of dyslexia. Like that isn't like you're dyslexic or you're not. And there's no tricks that are like going to help him like fix it. So like all of a sudden he goes with Jon Favreau to a couple of tutoring sessions and he's figured out how to decode and he's now phonemically aware. Like it just doesn't happen. It's a neurological disability. And I don't know, I'm sure this is just because of what I do for a living, but shit like this in movies just drive me nuts.
Now in in Rudy's defense, we do see D-Bob teaching Rudy basically not how to cheat, but like how to pass tests without really understanding the subject matter deeply. Like as a TA, he knows how the tests are written, so he's just basically teaching him patterns. But we do also get the sense that Rudy's becoming a bit of a Renaissance man, that he is becoming a bit more academically astute. So I agree with you on that point. Thankfully, though, we didn't get some montage of like Rudy, like, you know, you're gonna be a winner, reading books, and suddenly he's like the smart, like he graduates top of his class or something. I'm shocked that they didn't do that in this one, but I'm glad that they showed that bit of self-restraint.
See, what they would do in another movie or movies we've seen since is he would like half the montage would be him running the drills at practice. Half the montage would be D-Bob tutoring him. And it would go back and forth between the two things like that.
So like The Water Boy. Because that's like exactly what happens in the plot of The Water Boy.
That's and in probably a million other movies too. Exactly.
Every Adam Sandler movie, yeah.
Well, I was surprised by how many people show up in this movie. First of all, I have to talk about Jon Favreau because he's like the big name in this movie who's very young. You had mentioned that it was his first role, but I looked up his filmography. He had 2 other roles. One, he was a taxi driver, and 2, he was a background character. So regardless, yeah, they're not major roles. But why in this basically his first major role or his third movie ever, why is he second billed in this film?
He's got that producer power, man. He knew who he'd be someday.
I mean, I just didn't understand why D-Bob, who is this random character who's trying to get Rudy to have him talk to chicks, like, I feel like there are a lot of other characters in this movie or a lot of other actors who would be billed higher. I just don't understand without him having the star power drawing why D-Bob is second billed. I could not figure it out.
And I'd argue that he shouldn't have been cast at all in this movie. Like, Jon Favreau is a smart man. He's a talented man. I mean, this is the guy that produced Iron Man, Avengers Endgame, Swingers, and a bunch of dumb Star Wars shows. I don't know what this D-Bob character is supposed to be. I kept switching back and forth while watching this movie in my head. I'm like, wait a minute, this guy's going to end up being a pervert. He's going to molest Rudy. Maybe he's like some sort of a con man. Is he Rudy's friend? Like, is he Rudy's friend? Are they bonding? Is he exploiting Rudy? I just, as he was on the screen with those weird sweaters and like his fucking hair and just the way he moved, I wanted to just take 2 big steps away from the screen so he couldn't touch me.
He's a big guy too. I didn't realize, he looks like someone that would have been on the football team. I mean, he's tall. He's just a very large guy. And he obviously went on to lose weight. He was in Swingers with Vince Vaughn, who, by the way, Vince Vaughn shows up in this movie for like 2 seconds. And he did Swingers in 1996. So just shortly after this, Ned Beatty's in it, who, you know, from Deliverance and Superman, the movie, all that stuff. But the other guy, Robert Prosky, who's Father Kavanaugh that helped Rudy get into college. You've seen him in a ton of things. And then did you guys watch The Last Action Hero with Arnold Schwarzenegger? That was favorite of mine growing up. He's the old man that owns the movie theater that gets him into the whole magical ticket thing. So so you've seen that guy in a ton of stuff. But yeah, there are a lot of people in this movie. But the weirdest thing I thought was the Jon Favreau, Vince Vaughn thing. Like, wow, I guess they just met each other on this movie and said, hey, we should do something.
And like, it must have been a really rough 3 years for Vince Vaughn, because he looks like borderline good and like young and fresh and alive in this movie. And by the time he gets to Swingers, dude looks like a corpse.
He does not. He looks good in Swingers.
Yeah, I didn't.
You're telling me you'd fuck Vince Vaughn in Swingers?
I would fuck Vince Vaughn now. I think he's a good looking dude.
So you would fuck Vince Vaughn, but you won't fuck The Rock?
Ew, no. Too much muscle. Too much.
But Jon Favreau, I mean, he really slimmed down for Swingers a few years later. I mean, if you remember what he looks like in that. So it's interesting in this movie. I mean, he's a big guy, tall and also bulky. And then in Swingers, he's way slimmed down. But I would love to hear the story. I've never heard of them meeting on this movie or becoming friends, but like they're both in it. So I can only assume.
Sort of wishing now we had Favreau and Mice of Men. That could have been a something.
The other thing I think that is really interesting about this movie is it's hard for me, and I'm sure for most people, that when they see Sean Astin, it's hard to separate him from Samwise, right? It's hard to separate him from Lord of the Rings. And I love him in the Lord of the Rings. I love him in the Goonies, but like I also really love him in the Lord of the Rings. And what I thought was so interesting in watching this is about halfway through the film, I went, oh, okay. So Sean Astin is playing the same character, but instead of like Frodo and the One Ring of Power, it's Notre Dame. Like Notre Dame is his Frodo in this movie. And it's this obsession. It's that same kind of obsession that Sam has with protecting Frodo. But in The Lord of the Rings, it comes across as like loyalty and friendship. And here it comes across as stranger fucking danger because his behaviors is so stalker-like. Guys, let's just go through a couple of things. He breaks into the stadium and sets up shop there. He's a squatter. He lies just to be able to touch a helmet. Weird. And I know we're supposed to see the fact that it's endearing that he constantly is like revolving his whole life around this one goal. But I think we've all had those goals as children. Like, I don't know, I wanted to like move to Asgard and be Thor's wife, but I let that go. And you would have thought somewhere along the way that he would have matured enough to let it go. And it just comes across as like, this guy's weird.
Yeah, this is basically what my mom wishes I would do for like college applications and like job interviews. I remember when I wanted to work at the Arizona Republic as a reporter or editor. So I was wrapping up college and I wanted to go there. And so I was trying to get an internship and I didn't get that internship at the Arizona Republic. And my mom says, just go over there and go in the lobby and ask to talk to the publisher. And then talk to them, introduce yourself and say you want to work there. And then they'll give you a job. You're very smart. I'm like, Mom, that's not how it works. You know, and the same with like jobs. When I moved back to Arizona, I said, okay, I got set up with this recruiter. They're looking around. They're trying to find me a couple interviews and stuff like that. And she's like, well, why don't you just go and just wherever you want to work, just go introduce yourself. Just show up, wear a suit and go there. And I'm like, Mom, that is not how, that annoys the shit out of people. Like that is not the way to do it. And this even extends to like traffic tickets. She's like, just go talk to the judge and tell them, they'll see you're a good person and they'll let it go. And I'm like, Mom, this is America. There are rules and there are ways that you do things. And apparently Rudy broke all that. But I find it very hard to believe that he just waltzed his ass into the coach's office and was like, hi, I'm Rudy. And the coach was like, yeah, sure, I'll talk to you.
I had the exact same reaction, guys. As I was watching this movie, I feel like my jaw was agape. Like, I could not believe the stuff that he was doing. It was crazy. I thought he's a stalker. People would be calling the police on him, especially nowadays. And I don't know why this stuff came across as like cute and endearing back in the day. I mean, especially maybe when this movie took place or even in the early 90s. But he's basically like in that movie, The Fan with Wesley Snipes and Robert De Niro. Like Robert De Niro, that's the Rudy character, right? But in that movie, he's insane. Like he's crazy. He goes way above and beyond. Actually, he's like Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver or Robert De Niro in King of Comedy. Like he's like a lot of Robert De Niro characters where he just like he goes above and beyond what would be considered acceptable. And so I don't know how he got through so many people that allowed that kind of behavior, but I guarantee you could take this movie and put a horror, like a John Carpenter soundtrack behind it and edit it to be a complete horror movie where he just pops out behind a thing at the school and scares the girls that he's supposed to be picking up for D-Bob. Like, yeah, you could totally re-edit this into a different genre of film.
Oh my God, you're right. He takes her bicycle away. Yeah. He's breaking into the training room and sleeping in the cot, touching the helmets. Fuck.
There's an entire horror film just by using the existing footage and changing the score. But anyway, we kind of already touched upon this earlier, but the love interest storyline was so unnecessary. This movie felt long because if you really think about the plot of this movie, what is it? Rudy, you're too small to play football. I'm going to play football. But Rudy, you're small and you can't play football. But I'm going to do it. Like, that's the whole 2-hour movie. And so they filled it with these things that were unnecessary, like the girlfriend that from a young age, she's clearly interested in him and nice to him. And they grow up and she's taking him around trying to house shop where Rudy is like, yeah, and not paying any attention to her. So I thought that was a really unnecessary plot line that could have been removed. And then they try to make you feel bad because he comes home for Christmas and he sees that she's dating the older brother and he gets all out of sorts. But it's like, dude, you did not care about her one time in this entire film. So I thought it was just a very strange thing. And also, like, now she's with the older brother. Like, what are you doing? She's just like only connected to this family and whoever will take her from the Ruettiger family. I guess that's okay.
Yeah, but come on, Kevin. They have to show how hard Rudy's life is. It isn't just that he's not smart enough. It isn't that he's not rich enough. It's not that he's vertically challenged. It's that he's also not swaggy enough to keep this girl around.
And they don't just give him one love interest. He also has that second one, Mary, at Notre Dame. And I don't get that at all. Like, he's got a crush on her. She seems like a giant pain in the ass. He's like, hey, can I hang out with you? No, there's rules against that. Can I be in your club and help? No, there's rules against that. I'm going to smile and wear sweaters. She's not interesting at all. I'm not like charmed by her. And it doesn't go anywhere. What the fuck was that subplot all about?
I have to say, at least be thankful they didn't, because, in any other movie, she would be cold to him and, oh, you can't be here and all this rules. And then Rudy is so inspirational with a heart of gold. He convinces her that he's charming and they fall in love. And it's like, no, we didn't need another hour of that relationship. So I really was expecting that to happen and was pretty thankful it didn't.
So basically, so far, our opinion of Rudy is you fucked up, but not too bad. Well, after 2 years at Holy Cross and 3 rejections from Notre Dame, Rudy is finally admitted and attends football tryouts in an attempt to make the team as a walk-on. Assistant coach Yonto notices Rudy's determination and gives him a spot on the daily practice squad. Rudy convinces head coach Ara Persagian to let him suit up for one home game in his senior year. But the coach retires following the 1974 season and is replaced by former NFL coach Dan Devine, who refuses to place Rudy on the game day roster. Frustrated, Rudy decides to quit the team.
Did anyone understand the whole transfer scenario? Because he applied year after year and he said, this is my last chance. They don't take transfers from seniors. But then he transfers in and they're like, you're a freshman. I couldn't understand why he was a senior but only transferring in as a freshman.
Maybe he was, I don't know, because like the idea is that Notre Dame wouldn't accept any of those credits, right? Like they're not going to accept credits from a community college. So I think that he's a freshman, but he was a senior at the community college.
How does he run out of chances then? If they don't accept anything, why would he only have so long? He can go to more community college and more transfers. And I don't know.
And beyond that, they did this whole plot with the priest getting him into Holy Cross too. Rudy had the GI Bill from his Navy service, so that paid for college already.
Not in this movie. So I was wondering when you mentioned it earlier. So the only reason they skip over and for the movie they skip over Vietnam and him joining the Navy, they can't show you that because the entire movie is based on how much he's struggling and trying to work and pay for college. So they completely omitted his service in the military that would get him into school free because they had to make it a struggle.
Yeah, but we could have gotten an I'm going to get Bubba scene. And that would have been worth it all. I went to lowly Arizona State, so maybe I just don't get this Notre Dame appeal. But I don't know why anyone would want to go there. Like, based on this movie alone, Notre Dame in the 60s and 70s, it looks miserable. It's a bunch of old-ass people's idea of a good time. They're snotty toward students and anyone who else is trying to get in. The campus is hideous. And there is one hot chick in this entire movie, and she goes to Holy Cross. If I were Rudy, I'd just be like, cool, Holy Cross is great. I'm going to school here. It's totally fine. He could probably even get on Holy Cross's football team.
There's a whole different story here. When he started going there and doing well there, I was thinking, well, maybe he should just go there and maybe he'll become a priest or something. It just seemed like there's a whole different movie where he follows the Holy Cross thing. But I'm with you, Gene, for an inspirational story. This movie's kind of a bummer throughout the entire thing. Like, I really think they tried to make everything really gloomy and, he's going through so much hard stuff so that when he did finally achieve it, it was ramped up and felt that much better. But yeah, they all just seem so joyless and there are not a lot of fun moments. Like, I think the only joyful playing around moment was like Rudy taking that girl's bicycle and trying to pick up chicks for D-Bob, which again in today's terms is pretty creepy. But yeah, like the whole movie was not fun until the ending. So I just don't know what joy they were really trying to present here, or if it was even something they were aiming to do.
Yeah, and you would think to punch it up, right, between all these dull scenes and this drudgery of Rudy's life of sleeping on a cot and, seeding fields, that they would use the football, right, to make it exciting, to make it fun. But they decided to make this movie unbelievably long for no reason. As you mentioned, Kevin, like there's not a lot to work with. So just make it a short movie and make it tight and great to watch. Yes, we get Rudy's playing football and we understand that football involves tackling and tough guy shit. And we can see that Rudy is smaller than the other guys, but he's tough and he's determined and he's fired up. So you need like one, maybe two scenes to show us that. You don't need an hour of tackling drills and music to show us how great football is, I guess.
I was checking out during those scenes every time they came up. And so I think the reason why they did that was because this is a football movie and they want to show football or quote unquote football. And they could only film during very short segments, right? So the end game is the only time we really see football. We see basically one football game, and they filmed that during the band when the band was playing, like a halftime show of a real football game. So I think they were like, well, we need football in this football movie. So they ended up doing a half hour of tackling drills, but that's not exciting to watch. And it really was like the same repetitive thing over and over. So I think they should have filmed more football games and had actual plays going on. And it just, the tackling stuff was ridiculous after a while.
Well, the issue is you're trying to make a football movie about a dude who doesn't get to play football except for once. It's like, that's your issue because you can't show how good football is without actually having football, like having the competitive nature of football. And I don't know, like I understand that this is supposed to show us that like he deserves it, right? But for me, the way he's like sacrificing his body, and maybe this is just because I'm married to an addict, but it came across like he was like addicted. Like this was a psychiatric illness of some kind, that his obsession with it was like really unhealthy. I felt like if maybe back then they had like My Strange Addiction, it would have been like Rudy would have been on that show. Like, I'm strangely addicted to getting beat up at Notre Dame practices for a team I'm never going to get to play on. It just came across as like, this guy just needs a life.
Maybe, I guess back then, because it was popular, it was more endearing. But in today's terms, you're like, dude, come on, get a hobby.
Yeah.
Well, the head groundskeeper, Fortune, motivates Rudy to return to the team. Each of his fellow seniors, led by team captain and All-American Roland Steele, lines up to lay his jersey on Divine's desk and request that Rudy be allowed to dress in his place for the season's final game. Coach Divine lets Rudy suit up against Georgia Tech. And with Rudy's family and D-Bob in attendance, Steele invites Rudy to lead the team onto the field. And Fortune is there to see the game as promised. With Notre Dame leading 17-3, Coach Divine sends all the seniors into the game except Rudy, despite Steele's and the assistant coach's urging.
So this is where we get into the based on a true story. I know the real Rudy says that the movie is 92% accurate, but when you do a little bit of research on the movie, it seems like there's a lot more embellished where you're like, okay, I don't know how only 8% is made up. But Dan Devine, the new coach, they basically turn him into the villain. Like, he is adamant that Rudy's not going to play and screw up his record or whatever score he's trying to concentrate on. But in real life, it was his idea. He wanted Rudy to go out there and play. So there's a lot of stuff that was dramatized. But I mean, it's a movie, right? So I'm not necessarily holding that against it, but the way that they went to some of those extremes, where I kind of felt bad for the coach in real life. Like, he seemed like he was a nice guy.
Yeah, and you're supposed to be really moved by the moment when all of the players come in and they lay their jerseys on the desk. And sure, it's nice. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but there's so many other movies that do this, group protest so much better than this one does. And I think the one that comes to mind the most, which was just, a few years before this, is Dead Poet Society, where you've got that emotional Ethan Hawke with that terrible haircut getting on top of the desk saying, a captain, my captain. Like, that's a moment that like makes your skin like prickle up with goosies. And this, it was like, oh, okay. Like, they don't want him to play. Okay, cool. And this movie, I feel like it's like that because it doesn't really earn it, because for me, you have to believe in the character that you feel like is being wronged. So in Dead Poet Society, you know that Mr. Keaton is being wronged. It wasn't his fault that his student committed suicide. And here it's like, well, does Rudy really deserve to play just because, he worked hard and got beat up a bunch and is now a almost middle-aged dude still wanting to play for a college football team?
Going back to Fortune, the other made up character, or maybe it was an amalgam of a lot of people that kind of encouraged him and helped him along the way. Charles S. Dutton, in my opinion, gives the best performance in this film. I thought he was great. They keep you guessing from the moment that we meet him on the grounds, and he's like, get out of here. He's working in the stadium when Rudy breaks in, and he's like, yeah, you need to go. I like that he doesn't put up with any of his crap. But he's like, I'm going to play here someday. And he's like, yeah, that's great. See you later. And, you're like, why is he so cranky? What's going on in this guy's life? And then you finally get that moment revealed where he has that heart-to-heart with Rudy and says Rudy wants to quit because he knows the new coach isn't going to let him play. And he's like, you're going to regret that the rest of your life. And the reason why he is so familiar with the school and football and everything is not just because he works there, but he used to play and he quit the football team. And, it's something that's haunted him ever since. And I loved that scene. I thought, hands down, best part of the film.
You start to do the math here, though, and it gets your head spinning a little bit because, again, like you mentioned, Rudy says this movie is 92% accurate. So the coach was fine with him playing. The seniors never got together and laid their stuff down. Fortune never actually existed. And Rudy's older brother, Frank, who's like talking shit to him the whole movie, being a total asshole, also not a real person. In fact, Rudy's the oldest brother of all of his brothers. Therefore, I guess Johnny was not the older brother taking away his girl either. You start to wonder if this is like more Rudy's fantasy of his story than his actual story.
I don't think Rudy Ruettiger did a scientific study for those percentages. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that 92% is not has not been double checked and peer reviewed. So I think we just throw that number away. And but again, you can't really hold it against the movie. Are these based on a true story? Films always do this stuff. I think just own it for what it is. I think Joe Montana was asked about this movie. Joe Montana was actually a freshman when Rudy got to play. So he was there and he says stuff didn't necessarily go down the way that it was. But like Sean Astin's response to that is like, yeah, he's right. I mean, this is a movie. It's dramatized and, they had a point they were trying to make. So, I don't necessarily say that's a bad thing, but Rudy Ruettiger, don't be all like, yeah, 92% accurate. I did all this as heroically as I said. It's like, dude, it's a movie.
Dude, people got mad at Joe Montana for telling the truth about the situation. He's like, there was no chanting of Rudy's name during that game. Like nobody did that. And then also he said when they lifted Rudy up in that iconic scene where they lift him up, that was ironically. Like the players were like, hey, it's our dumb friend Rudy. Like, let's carry him out of there because he played one play.
Well, I think one of the most unrealistic parts of this movie is, as a former main section editor for a college newspaper, is the fact that everyone in that stadium read the college newspaper story on Rudy the day before. And that's why they were all chanting his name. Because the announcers like, apparently he was the feature. And it's like, yeah, maybe 5% of those people, if they have a good circulation, actually knew who this dude was.
I don't know. I mean, it was the 60s. Hey, what are we going to do today in South Bend? I don't know. Maybe read the paper. Well, as Ash mentioned, fans are aware of Rudy's goal from a story in the student newspaper, and a Rudy chant begins in the stadium. Hearing this, the Notre Dame offense, led by tailback Jamie O'Hara, overrules Coach Devine's call for a victory formation and scores a quick touchdown, providing defensive player Rudy a chance to get in the game and be entered onto the Fighting Irish roster. Devine finally lets Rudy play on the Notre Dame kickoff to Georgia Tech. Rudy stays in for the final play and sacks the Georgia Tech quarterback. He's carried on his teammates' shoulders to cheers from the stadium. An epilogue states that after 1975, no other player for Notre Dame had been carried off the field to the time of the film's release in 1993. Rudy graduated in 1976, and 5 of his younger brothers went on to earn college degrees.
Okay. So the last 10 minutes of this movie are a football movie. And this is where this film gets me because fuck, I love a football movie. And when his dad is there in the stadium and he's all excited when he runs out and there's this really quick, clipped pace and all of that. I liked that part. I don't think the rest of this movie is a good film, but the end is good. It's your typical football film. And I mean that as a compliment. And yes, I think there are other football movies that do this better. Remember the Titans, Any Given Sunday, those are personal favorites of mine. But I think that what they do here is enough. And I wish there was more actual football in this movie. I wish that if they were going to fuck with the truth, that maybe he got to play for a couple of games instead of just the last one, so that it was more interesting, because this part I actually liked.
Yeah, I started buying into that triumph angle when Rudy was allowed to suit up. Like when he gets his jersey on, they're in the tunnel. I bought into that. I could suspend my disbelief for a while. It's a small dream for a small man. He's not looking to like win big. He just wants to get on the field once. But when they started that Rudy chant and everyone started going, it stretched me to my limits. I couldn't handle it anymore and I was out.
I'm with Ash on this one for the last part of the movie. Like we said before, there's not a lot of football in this football movie, and when they do get to it, it's handled very well. So it's a shame the movie doesn't revolve more around a guy that gets to play football, because I think they nailed it. Like, they nailed the heart of the film. They pulled on my heartstrings. Like, I really, really liked these moments. The family's there. The people are cheering for him. I know that's a bit saccharine, but all of it together with that Jerry Goldsmith score, it hit me in the right places. So I forgot how long the movie felt, how joyless it felt. If more of the movie was like this, I think it would be a no-brainer, like in one of the great sports movies, because they really do get the tone in this last, whatever it is, 15, 20 minutes of it. It worked, and it made me feel a lot better about the movie overall because of the way they stuck the landing. Jerry Goldsmith, though, I mean, he's worked so much in his career, and that score, I do think it's a great score. I do think that it elevates the film. Without that main Rudy theme going throughout the movie, I think that it would have been more dull and maybe not hooked you as much. But man, every time that ramped up, am I alone there, or was that? I mean, that is a good theme, I think.
I think I'm way too cynical to like a movie like this. Like, I like all of those cues that are supposed to make me feel something. Like, I can see that coming from a mile away. And like, the way I process is like, well, fuck you. I'm not going to feel that. Right. Like, I don't buy into it at all. So I thought the score was super cheesy in this movie, if I'm being really honest.
No, you're a rebel. It reminds me of that line from Moneyball with Brad Pitt, where he says it's hard not to get romantic about baseball. I think it's the same thing. And I feel like Ash and I are on the same page, where she touched upon this, where it's like, yeah, in this moment, when you're talking about a team that comes together and they achieve something great, Rudy achieved this dream he was working on his whole life. It's hard not to get romantic about these sports movies. And I'm not a huge sports guy, but there's something so ingrained in our culture and in the country, you know, whether it's baseball, America's pastime, or football, which is such a huge deal. And you see these groups of people coming together and celebrating something unified. And it's a beautiful sight. And there aren't many things like that today that echo the same sentiment.
And I don't disagree with you. And I think that you do feel this here, but I don't think it's because of Rudy. I don't think it's about the fact that this dude got to play. You know, football and baseball and all of the sports, there's this collective unity. Like, it's like very seldom do we in this country come together and like celebrate something alongside each other. And, you know, I have to tell you, like, even just thinking about like Hurricane Katrina, when the dome reopened in 2006, like there was something so important about us all gathering in the Superdome again to watch the Saints play. Like, there's something about that collective excitement, and you're cheering for a group of people who represent you. And I think that's what they're going for here, is that Rudy's supposed to be the everyman, that he represents everybody. So it's like you're supposed to see yourself on the field with them and all the dreams that you've, you know, reached and are still working toward. Like, go ahead and keep working toward that dream, right? And that piece of this movie I don't think works. But just football in and of itself can elevate anything, like if it's shot well and if the excitement is there and they're running and people are cheering, like that group think that starts. I think that part works, and that's what elevates it. I don't think Rudy does it. I think the way they shoot the football is effective, and football itself makes this movie okay at the end.
Well, now's the time we give our Shat scores for Rudy. Our wipe score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie would take to get off your respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is playing for Notre Dame with that big golden helmet everybody wants to touch. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster of a movie. It's getting exploded in a steel mill accident. We'll start with you, Ash. What is your wipe score for Rudy?
So I think the only reason this movie is not a 4 wipe is because of the end. I don't particularly think that Sean Astin is good in this movie. He's a better actor than he is here. The movie, I think, is pretty slow. It feels like it was like 1,000 minutes long, and it's way too long. I think it's cheesy. I don't think the script is very good. But at the end of the day, here's the deal, guys. It's a movie about a mid to late 20s average athlete who gets pity put on the field. Like, that's what he is. He's pity put in. And I know there's all this talk now about like how children today don't have it as hard as we had it back in the day. And Rudy is the ultimate participation trophy athlete. He's the guy that is the reason why everyone on the team gets a trophy. And I'm super competitive. Like, I compete with my own children. Like, I won't let my kids win the matching game unless they legitimately win, because I think that you should earn things. I think that you should work hard and earn them. And if you're not good at them, that's okay. Go be good at something else. And I just wish Rudy had gone and done something else. And is it nice that he gets to play? Of course. I'm a human being. I think that, sure, it's nice. It's nice that his dad's happy. But come on, he shouldn't be there. He had no reason to be there. And this movie never really gets past that for me. I never understand why I should care about this guy who should not be a football player. And it's okay, because I shouldn't be a football player, but neither should Rudy. So for me, it's 3.5 wipes.
All right, that's 3.5 wipes from Ash. I'm right there with you, Ash, as usual. 3.5 wipes here. I would give Rudy a lower score. You tempered your score because of football. I'm tempering mine because I feel like I brought this all upon myself. Like 200 Shat episodes of Gene Lyon saying, simplify the script, be more earnest, stop being so flashy, just tell the fucking story. That got us here to this moment with Rudy. But the filmmakers had a good story to tell, and they had the cast to do it, and they just fell short of anything worth watching. I didn't enjoy this movie. It wasn't the worst thing I've seen. So for me, 3.5 wipes.
I don't think this movie is an awful movie, guys. It is sappy, it is cliched, but it also set the stage for dozens, if not hundreds of movies that we've seen since. I think the story is really simple at the core, and it's one that stands out with people for a reason, right? So whenever there's an underdog, people compare them to Rudy. Or I remember growing up, that was the one. There are probably other movies now that are more relevant, but he's a cultural figure. And even if you haven't seen the movie, you understand that Rudy got to play football. At the end of the day, that's what this movie is. 2 hours to get you to Rudy wants to play football. Rudy got to play. He's the little guy, the everyman. So that is because this movie works. And even if you question why it does, all the things come together in the end, like we all pretty much agreed on, that it came together and it worked. So we want the little guy to win. We want these things for ourselves. And it's a neat story that this actually happened, at least in a similar fashion. So I think it does a serviceable job, and I'm going to give it 3 wipes.
All right. So that's 3 generous wipes from Kevin, 3.5 from me, and 3.5 from Ash, which averages out to 3.3 repeating wipes for Rudy. And with 3.3 repeating wipes, that will tie Rudy in the 173 spot with Lost Boys, Caddyshack, Videodrome, Bad Boys, Explorers, Phantom Menace, and Hook. It is better than Weird Science, Batman and the Burbs, and not quite as good as 16 Candles, Vision Quest, Strange Days, Spies Like Us, Escape from New York, The Last Boy Scout, and Armageddon.
Other than The Lost Boys, I think that that's a really fair place for it to find itself.
I feel like that's being incredibly generous to Rudy.
It's Kevin's fault.
Let us know if we're right, if we're wrong. Write in at hosts@shatthemovies.com or call us at 914-719-SHAT and let us know what you think. Coming up next week, another sports movie. After losing his position as a minor league pitcher, Montgomery Brewster learns that his great uncle has left him $300 million. To inherit it, Brewster must spend $30 million in 30 days under a complicated set of rules that forbid him from donating too much to charity or retaining any new assets when the period is up. Unable to share details about the will's odd conditions with anyone, Brewster sets out to spend his money under the stern eye of paralegal Angela Drake. It was released on May 22nd, 1985, directed by Walter Hill, and this is one of my favorite movies of all time.
I've never seen this.
If you like cocaine, you're going to love this movie.
Then I'm going to love it.
Well, thanks, Ash, as always. Thank you, Kevin, for joining us this week. And thank you to the commissioners who make Shat the Movies possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. You can email us, host@shatthemovies.com. Support our podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, completing a free anonymous survey to help attract advertisers, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. Find all the information by visiting our website, shatthemovies.com. Also, you can check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all that information on our website, shatontv.com. Kevin, where can they find you?
Well, thank you for having me on once again. It's always a pleasure. And you can follow me on Twitter at Kevin R. Brackett. And you can follow the show at Real Spoilers. That's real with 2 E's. And of course, all your podcatchers. So check it out. It's a podcast where we spoil the movie. So we go plot point by plot point in a similar fashion, but we really just get into spoiling it. So if you haven't seen the movie, you want to, if you do care about that kind of stuff, see the movie first. And if you don't care, go ahead and listen, and maybe we can save you a few bucks on tickets. And we would love to have you check the show out.
Yeah, Kevin, I think from your pod, the one thing I've learned about my movie watching habits is I don't really care about plot twists or like what happens. Like I'm more invested in how the movie feels and how well it's done. Maybe it's just after years of doing this, but like when you guys did the Suicide Squad, I was like, okay, that convinced me I'm going to go watch it now. And when you did Reminiscence, I was like, okay, that convinced me I'm not going to watch it now. But in either case, I didn't feel like, oh, that was spoiled for me. I guess I just don't care.
Well, obviously, over the years, we've gathered all sorts of different listeners, and there's some people that save it and only watch it after or listen after they've watched the movie. There's some people that want to listen to it and then either check it out or don't. So really, it all just depends on your habits. So if you can save them, you can bank them. We've got 640 something episodes now. I mean, there's a ton of movies out there. Sometimes we even go back to old stuff. So, unlike where you guys stick in the 80s and 90s, we usually are pretty much new releases, but we've actually gone back and we did a really fun series. I may have mentioned it last time, but it was misbegotten sequels. So like there's sequels to Rosemary's Baby. Oh my gosh, there's 3 Dirty Dozen movies. There's all sorts of crazy movies where like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid has
what?
Yeah, there's a whole thing. So go back, check out. I guess that one is maybe a younger. That's like a prequel one. But there's all these sequels. Bad News Bears. There's a couple of crazy ones in there. So yeah, there's, even if you haven't seen some of the newer movies, you can bank those for later and go back and listen to some of these movies like the Maltese Falcon. You didn't think the Maltese Falcon needed a sequel? Well, they certainly gave you one.
Well, for those of you who have exhausted all of the Shat the Movies podcasts, and everyone in general, I highly suggest you guys check out Real Spoilers. It's a great pod. Wherever fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube, be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by iTunes, please leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. I think we're at like 4.6 right now, so let's get that up, guys. So on behalf of my co-hosts, Kevin and Ash, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us next week for the following movie.
Money. Everyone wants it. Until now, Monty Brewster didn't have it.
They tell me you're my only living relative.
But he just made money the old-fashioned way.
You have 30 days in which to spend $30 million.
He inherited it.
If you can do it, you get $300 million. But if you fail, you don't get diddly.
Why can't I tell my friends?
Because I don't want anybody to help me out.
What's wrong? Spike, what's wrong? $30 million. The man just got $30 million given to him. This is a good day,
He can't keep it unless he can spend it and have nothing left but the shirt on his back.
Well, we're going to have a lot of fun with this kind of money.
Jake, I'd like to hire you as my official photographer. Salary, $10,000 a week. How would you like to be my personal driver for the next 30 days at $5,000 a week?
What a country. America, love it.
Hey, anybody want to go to lunch?
Everyone thinks he's crazy.
I want to bet $50,000. It went up. We'll sell it.
I think we should consider the possibility of psychiatric help.
At the rate you're going, you'll have spent your entire inheritance in less than a month, and you'll have nothing to show for it.
But $300 million says he's right on the money. Richard Pryor and John Candy.
It's like that old saying, if for money I'd be a millionaire. I'm a millionaire.
Brewster's Millions. Coming soon from Universal Pictures.